Cool. Well, yeah, I'll get us started. First of all, thank you for joining today. It's very nice to have people here for this third webinar of the Boston IE Club chapter. Alex is here. So, Alex, do you want to introduce the group and what we're about?
Sure.
On here.
Hey, cool.
Greetings.
Hello.
Here we are. So the IE Club it is an amazing group, and we're pleased to have you here. The key essence of the IE Club, and we've formed a Boston chapter about 7 or 8 years ago, is that it brings together both large businesses, small businesses, and universities and art startup people to work together collaboratively. And one of the real challenges in all of the items we look at, including today and artificial intelligence, is how can people work together? And how can small startups find ways to work with large institutions and government agencies? And the experience that the people who are involved in the IE Club, both in Paris and in Israel and Montreal and Boston and other locations, is one of the things that I think over the many events we've done over the last 7 or 8 years here in Boston has been one of the central themes. And it is always a backdrop to what we're doing. So we're pleased you're all here. Those of you who are in the Boston area, we hope will capture your information, and will be, now the world post-COVID or better in COVID, we'll be looking to have an in-person meeting sometime later this fall. So thank you again for joining us.
Good. Just to add to what Alex said, so since the beginning of this year, we have been organizing webinars, mostly because of COVID, and to some extent to reach out people from across the world, right? Because even today we have speakers that are from Boston, speakers that are from Europe, speakers that are from Canada. So be able to have that diversity of opinions and people on the panel. This is the third webinar that we're organizing. This one and the next one are all about artificial intelligence in some shape or form. This one is about artificial intelligence and health and related e-commerce implications. The next one, which will be in December, I believe December 7 is a tentative date, will be artificial intelligence and the impact on food is the kind of thing that we're going after. So please be on the lookout for the next one as well. It's going to be a very interesting topic and very relevant to this discussion. To get us started, what I would love to do is actually introduce our keynote speaker. So Dr. Kafi, and actually I won't do an introduction. Instead, I will let Cam introduce himself and kind of go from there with the keynote.
Thank you, Arnaud and Alex, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys. I'm Cam Kafi. I'm the Vice President of Clinical Strategy at Imagia Connexia Health. I'm a physician by training. My background was in molecular cell bio, immuno-oncology, and health informatics, but I've been working for now over 8 years in digital health and artificial intelligence, especially on the commercial development of products and R&D, as well as acting as an executive advisor for several startups on data strategy. And what I'm going to talk about today in the presentation, just giving you an overview of what I think artificial intelligence in healthcare really implies, and some of the approaches we've taken to kind of bring solutions to patients. And with that, hopefully I'll go into presentation mode. Or should we let you introduce everyone else and then I'll present?
No, go for it.
There we go. Slideshow. So can you see my screen? All right, and I'll try to keep this short. I know how people get in Zoom meetings. So really my goal is talking about improving global cancer care and health equities through technologies like artificial intelligence and digital health. And I'll start by really highlighting that the quality and quantity of AI research in healthcare has been growing rapidly. There's a lot of studies showing very interesting applications and really cool results over the last few years, with a growing level of evidence that's showing the value across a variety of applications. But really, the number and scope of usable products is still currently limited. And that's because when you go to the FDA, you have to show a lot of evidence of how your tool can generalize, what the applicability is, and prospective trials. And this has been a challenge because despite a lot of research, it's really not translating into an immense amount of clinical benefit yet. And a large aspect of this is that AI not only requires diverse and high quality data to work, but it's difficult to generalize models trained on a single institution to new practice settings. And this is in large because when we look at all the sources of real world data, this could be from claims, EHRs, patient reported outcomes, wearables, labs, genetics. It's not only very complex and diverse in types, but the way it's generated generally in biology is kind of messy. You can imagine that really lab procedures, normal values, and a lot of things that go into generating and capturing this data in a day-to-day setting, it varies from one institute to another, from one practice setting to another. And what most people think AI looks like is that you have data, you apply AI, and then there's value. But what really happens is that there's a lot of work that has to go into selecting, curating, engineering, modeling, validating to deliver any type of value. And this is on top of constraints that include legal, ethical, historical biases, and things of where it was captured. So on top of that, when we're talking about AI, there's multiple domains, tasks, methods, technologies that go behind it. So even though we talk about AI in general, NLP applied to unstructured versus structured reports for a classification or learning task is very different than computer vision. It's very different than optimization. And when we try to compound this across the types of data that exist, you can start seeing where the challenge lies, and that really we're dealing with very difficult tasks and setups in order to deliver this type of value when it comes to a real world setting outside of research. So the way we and many people look at it is that the opportunity would be to bring AI to where the patients and data are, to deliver this last mile of precision oncology. By going to institutes or places where data is, you're able to develop a suitable process and workflows to aggregate, clean, and identify things where it's going to be used, and ideally work across these different institutes to be able to deliver solutions that can generalize to new populations, or what's considered data drift. And the value is really creating high quality local data sets, maintaining it with the institutes that are the owners and have privacy, can create a longitudinal data record, and at the same time, by working on site, solutions that are derived can be re-implemented much easier. So the way we came about it is really trying to look at, again, if I'm going to break this down to the left, which is where the data sits, and you can both do R&D and deliver solutions, and the right side really deals more with workflows and things related to how the oncologist would access and deliver things. And I know a lot of people are going to be talking about that. But the way we looked at it is, if you're going and bringing capabilities to hospital sites, both for R&D and solution delivery, you're able to access the different types of data sources that exist in the health informatics system, use that to do R&D in an environment that is very close to where care delivery happens, be able to run all the data processes in one place, work with the experts, and when you develop something, then reintroduce it on site as a solution that can be accessed for a more rapid care delivery, and the ability to kind of go into R&D, into product loop in a much more efficient way than if we acted as like a let's say central agent where we try to take out data, develop tests or products just in-house, and then and somehow have that delivered back example would be, in liquid biopsies where things have to be shipped out to companies because everything is done only in the central lab. And that introduces some problems down the line. And I'm going to go over 3 examples of what we were able to do by taking this kind of approach. The first one was developing a real-time AI colonoscopy solution. And I can't, the video is not going to work, but really what we did is by accessing colonoscopy videos from multiple institutes and working with the GIs, we were able to apply computer vision and machine learning on deep convolutional networks to do detection and differentiation of cancerous polyps in real time. And this is now something that is being productized and shipped through Olympus and will be available again at the sites that we worked at and expanded as a product to do real-time assisted AI for colonoscopy procedures. Another example of what we had at ICH is NGS-based liquid biopsy testing. Here, again, the approach we took is to bring capabilities in-house to community cancer centers or any cancer center that has basically a desktop sequencer. What we would do is give them the queue and all the protocols and wet lab procedures of how to run things, give them the guidance on how to set up an assay, and then provide them with the bioinformatics and AI so that within the hospital, a blood draw could be done, the test could be run on site, QA'd, signed out by the local pathologist and provided to the oncologist as is. And by having done this in this distributed fashion, we see a lot more diverse, not only are we able to get a lot more diverse data sets from the different populations, not just in the US, but globally, but then also optimize it so that it works better across different practice settings, capturing this type of drift and diversity, as well as getting access to things like EMR data that others wouldn't. So for doing trial recommendations, we're able to kind of match it a bit better to what is available at that local site versus doing something like generic that disqualifies 80% of the people from a certain finding. And last but not least, really where we were working on a kind of showing that you can not only work in a multimodal, multicentric approach, but generalize findings into new settings, we were working on immunotherapy outcome prediction, where we would get access to different data types, starting with a single institute, scaling it to 2 and now 6, including clinical variables, CT scans, biomarkers such as PD-1, and expanding into things like RNA-seq and digital pathology for spatial omics. And what we were able to show is that by going and working in such a distributed fashion and having the AI with the centers, we're not only able to develop models that are, let's say, non-inferior to current clinical practice on a single site, but to do so in a multicentric fashion that generalizes to new, third, fourth, unseen places, addressing the generalizability aspect of things. So overall, as you can see, we work with a diverse set of collaborators, both on the industry and HCP or HCO side, on R&D and on the productization aspect of things. And this comes back to what was said at the very beginning. One of the key ways for small and big companies to be able to collaborate and work with a variety of partners, I think, is by understanding some of these constraints and conditions for how AI would work in healthcare, going to where the patients and the data and even the physicians are, and being open to collaboration and basically providing capabilities, doing tech transfers into places and becoming a partner where you can then now work with a variety of players to discover new markers, new drugs, new diagnostics, and then be in a good place to also productize and commercialize it with them and get it to the patients faster. So with that, I want to thank you all for listening to me, and I'm looking forward to a very interesting and fruitful presentation from everyone else. How do I stop? There we go.
Cool. Well, thank you
Less
so
than
much.
10 minutes.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. It's very interesting to see all the research that you are involved in. Now it's time for our panel. But first, we'd like to introduce Sarah, who is the founder and CEO of Eazy, a French startup in food tech. And she's also a member of the executive committee of the AI Club. Sarah is actually our panel moderator. So she's the one going to drive that discussion moving forward with all our panelists today. So Sarah, take it away.
Thanks for the intro, Arnaud. Hi, everybody. Very happy to be moderating this webinar today. We are very lucky to have expert panelists that are very knowledgeable in their fields and with whom we're going to do a deep dive on this fascinating topic. So I'm not going to do an intro for everyone. I'm going to let every panelist just give quick words about their backgrounds. So maybe we can start with Gay Buck. Could you give a few words regarding your experience and what you've been doing in this field?
Sure, happy to. Thanks, Sarah, and thanks for having me. I am a partner on our, I work at Mass General Brigham, which is the largest health system in Massachusetts. We have 5 research hospitals here, and I head up a venture fund investing in AI and digital-based solutions, where the hospital has decided that at least the initial product offering is something that meets an unmet need here. And I've been in the venture business prior to joining the health system. I was a venture partner at a venture fund in Boston for about 8 years. And prior to that, I have a background in business development across a number of different sectors. And so that's a little bit about me, and happy to be here.
Thank you, Gay. We're very, very happy to have you with us today. Our second panelist, we have with us today Don O'Neill, VP of Engineering at Path.ai.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much, Sarah. My name is Don O'Neill. I'm the VP of Engineering, as Sarah said, at Path.ai. We're a Boston startup focused on bringing sort of AI power to the pathology space, both for drug delivery, but also in clinical settings, so hospitals, labs, to help with disease diagnosis. Before Path.ai, I joined about 3.5 years ago or so. I was actually in the e-commerce space, and before that, finance. So a relatively newcomer to the healthcare tech, but loving it so far. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Don. Our third panelist also is Roy Andrews, CEO of Data V Labs. You're muted.
Sorry for this one. Hi, everyone. So thank you, Sarah, for the introduction. So I'm the co-founder of Data V Lab. We are a small French startup, deep tech, specialized in computer vision for AI. So to put it very simply, we train the machine to recognize objects or situations on images and videos. And we are entering our fourth year of activity and are present in the Middle East and Europe primarily. Prior to that, I have a small experience in AI for 2 years, and even before that, I worked on data-related topics, and I've seen the market evolve over the past few years with our modest experience here in Paris. Happy to discuss this very interesting subject with all of you.
Thanks, Roy. Thanks. We're happy to have you with us today also. And our last panelist is Julien Chausson, Engagement Manager, leader of ThinkLab at IBM.
Hi, everyone. I used to be in the computer vision field as well for quite a few years, specialized in the environmental industry, and I switched to IBM to actually lead also the Quebec IBM Discovery Accelerator, which is here to really accelerate the scientific discovery process that can, lead our research that's done in the laboratories into the market way faster. And we have a huge focus on artificial intelligence to help us achieve that. And one of the vertical we're addressing with this is the healthcare sector.
Thank you, Julien. We are very happy and lucky to have you all today to discuss artificial intelligence and the impact on health and the e-commerce components. And without further ado, let's deep dive. And our first topic is about the current artificial intelligence impacts, as I said, on health. But we are starting with what has been the evolution since, and what can we do today with artificial intelligence and machine learning that we could not do before in the domain of health and healthcare in general. So my first question is this one, it goes to Don.
Cool, thank you. So I guess first, just sort of by way of introduction, sort of the healthcare space, I think, as we all know, is vast. There's tons of opportunity, but also there's a ton of need. And what's really exciting today is that sort of major regulatory bodies, for example, here in the US, the FDA is very keen to see investment in this technology in the healthcare space. We also see significant investment from life sciences. And so in both drug discovery, so finding compounds and molecules that can help in treating disease, but also in then taking those new drugs and delivering them and getting them approved by various different regulatory bodies around the world. So lots and lots of activity, lots of excitement, lots of support and interest. And so it's really exciting to see, especially for a new technology. Beyond sort of life sciences, in the diagnostic space, again, a lot of interest. AI, ML, computer vision, deep learning can bring a lot of value. My own company, Path AI, we're working to develop models to analyze tissue and help identify at a very high level of precision diseases and potential, correct treatment plans, et cetera, to support pathologists. And so this is a huge area as well. And obviously the precision that's possible through computer vision and computers in general is incredibly helpful. We also, there's a major trend in the industry for the last number of years, and it's continuing to move towards proactive health monitoring, and lots of solutions analyzing data, helping to identify possible trends, maybe some diseases. I mean, we're even seeing stories now of where just the simple Apple Watch is actually helping to save lives by identifying anomalies in people's biometric data and alerting them to go see their doctor. It's getting to the point now where, I'm hearing personally of stories from my friend group where that's happened to a parent. So it's really exciting to see us move into that phase. But there's just so much opportunity, beyond diagnosis and drug discovery, improving workflows within hospitals and labs. Just a lot there to focus on.
Yes, that's fascinating. Julien, do you have a take on this subject?
Yes, to build upon what Don just said, what's really fascinating also with AI is the virtual circles like it's creating. And so one of the approach we have in drug discovery at the Discovery Accelerator is to actually use generalistic method or models of AI that are going to support building better AI products or products directly that are going to solve healthcare issues. And so you can think, about really generalistic products such as deep search, which is an AI model used to, create a knowledge base. And that can be applied in any field, but in the healthcare sector, it's really fascinating the process you need to really study your problem and set up your hypothesis. And when you're looking for new molecules, now you can also use, for example, generative models that are really going to help you have way more relevant hypotheses to test. And we keep developing these tools that are really accelerating the field. And so drug discovery in particular, but many others are going to be impacted by AI that's originally not specifically dedicated for the healthcare sector. And so I found that fascinating.
It's true that the potential of solutions and the applications of AI are so numerous. And the next question is for Gay and is about the adoption of these processes and how challenging it can be. You are
Thanks.
on.
Yep. No, I got it. Sorry about that. Yeah, no, I think that our keynote speaker Cam covered a number of issues with that terrific chart around the different steps. And I think we have data at the health systems coming from so many different sources, unstructured, structured, and different databases, that getting normalized, cleansed data that can inform the AI programs is a big impediment to overcome. So that's sort of one, is how do you get a large enough data set that you're not going to have sort of inherent biases in the solutions that it drives you towards. And I think that there's been a lot of work in that area, but it's still being worked out. And the other that he touched on, rightly so, is the FDA, or the regulatory challenges, not just in the US, but elsewhere. And one of the ways that here at Mass General Brigham, we're trying to overcome that is we have a data science office that's actually set up a CRO for AI algorithms and products, so that they can work with companies, partner with them around getting access to clinical data in a way that is HIPAA or privacy compliant, to both train and then to validate their models. And as large as we are, the other challenge is even you need larger data than just from one health system. Again, as Cam said, when you train on one health system doesn't necessarily port over to the next health system, particularly if the population is has different demographics to it, or different sets of diseases that they're struggling with. So the data remains, despite all the progress, getting the data, the right data, and getting it into the right format remains a pretty significant challenge. The other piece that I've been in my current role for 2.5 years, it's my first time inside a health system. And the other piece is just really understanding the workflow issues and the amount of change management required to implement an AI solution. So as you develop an AI solution that works, it's incredibly important to work with the group that's actually going to be using the output and ensure that the way that that output is being delivered is in keeping with the clinician or the care provider's workflow. So those are sort of two things that we spend a lot of time here looking at and understanding.
Do you are you able to identify areas in which the adoption is much faster than other areas, for example?
Absolutely. So some of the areas that we particularly where we see the greatest uptake fastest is more on the administrative side. So for example, here in the United States, when a physician is providing care, they need to put in codes, CPT codes, that are then used to bill the insurance company or to bill the patient after care. And that is a relatively labor-intensive process. And here at Mass General Brigham, we have spun out a company that has used AI to automate a lot of that process. It's still a challenging process, so it's keeping a human in the loop, but being able to automate that process by 70%, so that you really offloading the amount of labor required is one. And then we also have invested in a company that uses an AI knowledge engine to go through both structured and unstructured data and automate the filling out of what's called patient registries. So for a lot of procedures, particularly surgical procedures in the US, when they're done, the health system is supposed to fill out a series of forms that then get submitted to what's called a patient registry. It could be a national registry, or it may be an internal quality registry. But for the national registries, we've invested in a company, Carta Healthcare, that will, again, automate that, keeping the human in the loop, but automating it by 85%. So those are the sort of things that can really, help the the health system provide care at a lower cost and don't require clinical workflow change. So those are sort of two examples to put out there.
Thank you, Kay, for sharing. Let's move on to the next big topic that we will deep dive in today. And it's about the impact that it has on healthcare offerings. So we know that artificial intelligence and machine learning is going to have a huge impact and will play an important role in the healthcare offerings. And given the rapid advances that we've noticed in the past years, we know that AI has the potential to revolutionize health and do even more than that. So there's a big question, which is when will AI replace humans in the broad medical process domain, even if we're not there yet. But let's talk about the challenges that you have to overcome to reach this state in the future. And maybe, Roy, you could share your point of view on this topic.
Yes, with pleasure. So I would distinguish different types of challenges that we would need to overcome in order to reach the vision that we have of AI. Maybe before diving deep into the technical, let's say, challenges required related to the data set or other, I would like to build up on the idea that Gaye and Dr. Kafi rightly suggested regarding let's say we can call it the balance between reliance or the percentage of reliance on human versus machine, because I think it all comes up to this idea. So how reliant will we be on the machine as human beings? What I'm trying to suggest by that is, for example, if we one of the main problematics when it comes to implementing an AI or user adoption is the end user's ability to operate this technology. In other words, for example, if we train a radiologist or if we introduce an AI into a radiologist's workflow, and it ends up adding workload or mental load on the user, on the doctor himself, it's kind of problematic, because if the radiologist, for example, needs to, in addition to doing his regular job, needs to correct the machine's choices, it can be problematic. So I think it will, we still need some time in order to gain more confidence with this technology and to see its ability to simplify our lives and not complicate it. So in terms of user adoption, I think there is a lot of work yet to be done to help and convince organizations as users of this technology and the domain experts themselves. So the doctors, nurses, biologists who will be using this technology. It's really a major area of concern, even more than the technical ones that we're seeing today. Because technical concerns are purely temporary. So for example, yes. So for example, the data set issues. So one of the issues we have is to be able to deal with the edge cases in AI. So some of you may have seen the case where Tesla mistakenly recognizes the moon as being an orange light on the road. So this is one of the cases, for example, that is very common. So the ability to address all these edge cases will be very important, because it will impact on the confidence or the trust the end user will put in this technology. Because we can't ask a radiologist, for example, to be entirely reliant on a specific tool without first convincing him that this tool is very reliable and that he could put any life within the hand of this tool. So it's really user adoption. I think it's a very, very important topic, and also the idea that because everything related to AI comes with a certain amount of imaginary. So people imagine something about a technology that are not very close to the reality. So in the public side, and this can impact on the credibility, and it can create a fear for the end user that his job would become obsolete which is of course totally false, because at the end of the day, the place of the human in this entire loop will become even more important. But it's also one of the psychological levers to address. And so this involving the end user is very important. And of course, from a technical point of view, as Dr. Kafi very rightly suggested, the generalizability, of a technology is a key area of concern. Because, for example, just to give an example, in computer vision, when we are working on a specific data set, just the fact of changing the luminosity or a small parameter in the image is enough to confuse the AI. So there's a lot to do also on the dataset side of it. So these are some of the pain points, let's say, or limitations that are being worked on and that need to be addressed for the future.
Thank you, Rory. Don, do you see the similar limitations, whether it is technical regarding user adoption or regulation?
So I have a slightly different take, and I think all of what Roy has outlined certainly applies in many areas. But what I love about sort of the healthcare space in particular is sort of, there's a lot of additional safety procedures sort of, and your software development life cycle, your validation processes and protocols, unlike other industries, are actually often a critical sort of part of your development process and what you're developing too. So you more in this industry than certainly the e-com industry I came from, do you upfront define what your criteria is for success? What is your endpoint? What are your acceptable ranges that you're going to operate within? And we have found that to be really helpful in terms of like sort of building a product to operate within that sort of well-defined space. So certainly getting a start early and now with very specific solutions that add a ton of value and that assist the doctor, for example, in the space we are with pathology, that assist them in making the overall determination is the healthcare space is actually one of the better spaces for that, where you don't necessarily get into the sort of the unrealistic expectations that might exist in other fields, that, as Roy was pointing out. So just sort of a positive take on what I'm seeing within the healthcare world. So hopefully that helps.
Thanks, Don.
And I do think, if I can add, I think that there's a lot of opportunity for AI, despite the concerns people may have about about the risk to people's jobs. In healthcare, there's such a shortage, particularly today, of clinicians at all levels, that a great application for AI is to help particularly for programs where you can set a confidence interval so that, as your program can demonstrate that it's extremely reliable on the plain vanilla cases, the extent that you can use that to really triage cases, if you will, or triage decision-making to what's called, to the right person, to use folks who are at their highest level of their license, so that you can get the, key cases that can be dealt with by a nurse to the nurse, and therefore basically spread the more, the higher level expertise across the right patients and spread them more effectively. Because we're basically dealing with scarce resources across the continuum of care providers. So I think that's a real great opening space, and where I think we'll see the first sort of real uptake of clinical decision support is in where people have a lot of confidence, where there's still that the program can appropriately triage, and where you keep the person in the loop so that if something isn't quite right, they can intervene.
That's a great point. If I could add one thing, we see a lot of tests in the diagnostic space where, there's a lot of logic. If this indication is seen, then order additional tests that have to then be processed. And the challenge there can be that a doctor might look at, for example, slides from the biopsy a couple of times before they're actually able to get a full view of the disease and how it's progressing. And so if AI can get in there and sort of support and say, oh, order up these additional slides with these additional stains, so that when the pathologist does look, you've saved days in some cases in terms of getting to that disease, that determination around their disease state, and you've got an answer to the patient faster, which I think is also super helpful. So driving efficiencies within the space, but then also improving sort of the patient experience as well.
Thank you. And Julien, do you have a take on the computational limits that are related to this topic?
Yeah. So first, I think we're all agreeing that really focusing also on enhancing the human before replacing them is a key part to be successfully having AI adopted in the healthcare sector. And yeah, one of the limitation we're facing right now, and Roy raised the point, like when you change, just a little bit the lighting or a little bit the data set, like you need to really multiply your data set to cover all the cases, and even there are still edge cases that are hard to handle. And so that's putting on our shoulders a really real physical limitation, which are the computation limits. And so one challenge we'll have to overcome is to explore also what we call right now frontier machine learning and quantum machine learning that might leverage the power of quantum computers that are going to be ready sooner than later to be going beyond these computation limits. And so that's a field of study right now that's of particular interest, I believe, for sectors that require very large data sets.
Thank you, Julien. We have about 10 minutes left to address a little more topics. Just FYI to the audience, there's a Q&A panel. If you have any questions, feel free to write them, and we'll address them with the panelists at the end. Julien, I'm going to stay with you for this one. Do you think there's one AI killer app that would stand out, and if that's ever possible to have one of these?
I don't think there will be one in the short term. I believe there will be a constellation of significant improvements happening throughout the field thanks to AI and thanks to a few applications. But I believe the domain is too vast, too complex, and will require way too much data to be able to provide one killer app. One thing that maybe one app that will sort of supersede a lot of those is if one is able to really handle data better than the others and merge multiple data points better than the others to provide better value to the other AI models. Maybe this one will take a major place, but the field is pretty open still for plenty of startups to keep playing in it, I believe, for years to come.
Okay, thanks. Let's stay in the future perspective of this topic. Kay, do you have a take on what are the jobs that will be related to AI tomorrow? We know there's it's like a market changing area. So what are the implications of the evolutions?
Yeah, well, I think that in terms of the jobs for tomorrow, I think we'll see the quickest adoption of AI-based solutions, particularly where there is the most acute labor shortage, because that's where your systems are going to be the most open to change. So I work in an academic medical center. We have community hospitals, but sort of the core of our organization is an academic medical centers. And I think that one would see faster adoption of clinical decision support, for example, the sort of work that Cam is working on at community hospitals, which don't have access to as much in-house expertise. So I think that if one wants to think about, and I don't have a single killer app for AI, but if you want to look, I sort of go back to Ed Shine's book about where the system is open and look for where is the system open, where is the most acute pain, where is the biggest problem. And then that's where you're likely to see more openness to change. Because I think AI is, as with many other digital solutions in the past, is hand in glove with change management as well. So those two have to go together. So you look for where the system is open. And I think that's where your health systems are in the most difficulty. can't hire enough nurses. So how do you leverage the nurses you have? Don't have enough primary care physicians. How do you leverage? What can you offload? What can you not offload? What does AI lend itself to do? And then let the doctors do the remainder. That's sort of how I see it. But I don't have that single killer app.
Okay, thanks. Remaining.
If I could add a comment, if I could, say, I think one thing that's I've learned in my transition into the healthcare space is that there's, in the tech world, we think of like there's winner take all in some of these spaces. The healthcare space is so vast, and there's just so many radically different areas to invest in and to work in that there's just so much opportunity out there, and also to the points being made about sort of staffing, but also accuracy and sort of many of the processes, many of the ways diseases diagnosed today, for example, just drawing from MySpace and pathology, done the same way it's been done for 100, 150 years. New technologies might be stains, but the human is doing the vast majority of it. And having machines help by providing it access to like additional data, views of that information is proving to be incredibly helpful too and driving demand. So it's just a great space.
Thanks, Don. Staying on the topic of the jobs of tomorrow, we have an interesting question from Christian, head of healthcare major at Epita, and he's asking, what are the skills needed by students to work on AI for healthcare? If you have any advice or clues onto what to point.
I'm happy to take a pass, but I'll come at it from an engineer's perspective. So I'll hand it off to the rest of the panel then for, biomedical engineering is a very common sort of undergrad study here. And what we're seeing is that those programs are adopting AI and computer vision very quickly. If you're following a comp sci path at the moment, there's definitely masters and additional study programs that take you into ML methods and AI, and that can go deep. But I think biomedical gives you a really solid foundation in, sort of the healthcare for, when I look at across my team, and you can see the people who have strong bio backgrounds and have studied it beyond myself have took it as far as like high school level, right? So it's been sort of a whole new learning. So that would be my recommendation, but that's coming at it more from the engineering perspective.
Yeah, and then I would just add, I don't have that technical background, but my perspective, just looking at the data issues that the health system is facing, taking some of the social sciences, thinking about equity and sort of thinking about social justice and understanding a bit about demographics and data sets and how do you correct for, how do you perceive inequity, and then how do you address it is one. And the other is, as I said, it's a change management job. So as you progress in your career, to have some background or some understanding of organizational behavior and organizational change would be a helpful set of skills. So.
Okay, great. I think we have time for.
If I can add up, Sarah, sorry about like the question of education and like background. I would add like a small parenthesis regarding so the idea is that, for example, just to give an example, until not so far ago, for example, in France, doctors would be trained according to the exact same way that they have been trained over the past 40, 50 years, 60 years. Things haven't changed a lot. And now in the past like few years, they are in the medical students curriculum, it's starting to change with the introduction of a, let's say, tech mentality. And I think it's very important because it's in this way that you can start to enable change, whether AI or other technological tools, by introducing them in the existing curriculums or career paths. I think it was a small parenthesis, but just to highlight that they say that traditional or normal careers are still like should be still pursued with a tech touch, or either like having a background in both being a doctor and an engineer at the same time, or having this like two helmets, let's say. it was just a small comment about this aspect.
Thank you. Any more comments on this topic? Okay, so I think we have time to squeeze in one last question about the ethical implications of using even more AI in the future to make or assist professionals. Do you have any takes on this? Don, maybe?
Yeah, no, I think there's been a lot of comment about sort of data source and where the information is coming from. That is a paramount. That's a sort of an incredibly important concept across all of healthcare already. We talk about the safe movement of data from sort of clinical settings into the research settings through processes such as IRBs and other terms of consent. And so already this industry is very focused on making sure that there's that we're using the right data, that we have permissions for the right data. And it's sort of doubly so then when training your models and working on your products to ensure that, again, as the guest speaker had sort of mentioned as well, that you're training those models on a broad, diverse set of data, representing sort of the population as a whole. And it's when you take a product to for approvals, my experience here with sort of working in the US is with the FDA is they really do drill into sort of the data set that you're using, not just to develop the models, but also to validate the models, to understand that it is, that diverse data set, and that you have covered off sort of many of sort of the known sort of both primary cases and edge cases. So, that's a big, I think for anyone getting into the healthcare space and companies developing, you need to make sure that some of your early hires are people who are very knowledgeable about that space, because you will not succeed as a company if you are not taking sort of where your data governance and where it's coming from seriously.
Okay. If you don't have any last comments on this, I'm going to pass the mic to Maurice.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sarah. You're taking one topic after the other, very different subjects, and you're doing very well. Congrats, and thank you for our panelists for sharing their insight and deep knowledge with us. I sure learned a great deal this afternoon with you. And some of the, thank you, Cam, thank you, Gay, thank you, Don, thank you, Roy, and Julian. Very enlightening, very interesting. I think it's a talk. I mean, if I go back for a few seconds into Cam's introduction, I think that you touched upon very sensitive things to us, because when you're dealing with things around oncology, I think all of us are very we know how important this subject is, and we know how far we need to do to get into solutions that become more and more, or that address more and more of the people who are touched by that. So thank you for touching upon the subject. I think I totally understand why we decided to address health when we decided that AI was a big topic with us for us. It seems to me that there is so much data, as you mentioned it, in when we address any topic in health. I don't even I don't see how we can address those issues if AI was not available to us. So I think it's a great opportunity for us that AI is becoming more mature, because it's allowing us to address more and more complex things. We are in health, and I think that maybe one of the important things for us is, I think health or healthcare will allow us to help AI get further, because in health we are lesser impacted by things like recessions. And as we may be going through higher and lower times, and as we are addressing or as we are building solutions for healthcare with AI, I think those solutions will be available to other fields that are lesser fortunate to be able to attract investments and long-term investments such as healthcare can. So I think it's very fortunate that we can build more and more thanks to the long-term vision in a field like healthcare. We discussed the regulation, and I understand that it will help build, it will probably help build more robust solutions, because they will need to go through different systems and different approvals. And we all know how difficult it can be for a solution to be approved by the FDA, for example. So I think maybe it's a good thing to have this high level for approving those systems. Now we discussed something, because it was in the middle of our discussion when we were building the webinar, and one of the things was, what is the social impact? Is AI going to destroy is it going to scare the people who work in the health field? And I think you answered it very well by saying that not at all. It will allow the physician, the other people, to have a stronger response thanks to what can be added with AI. And I would finish by saying that it seems to me that AI is not a choice, it's a necessity. We are dealing with such complex issues, with so much data to be addressed. We're just lucky that we have a tool called AI that can help us find solutions, because otherwise maybe we would not be able to do so. And maybe another conclusion for me would be that thanks to AI, we have another way to innovate and to put more resources for entrepreneurships. And this is our reason, or this is something very important for us at the IE Club. Innovation and enterprise is at the core of what we do, and probably AI is very much in the middle, or is is an area where we can where we can put resources for that. So having said that, I would say that I think we built on our session today, and I think we have built for our next webinar planned again on the topic of AI in healthcare, more focused on e-commerce, on the e-commerce component in December. And I would like to finish by thanking all of you for this very insightful webinar. And I'm going to maybe turn it to Alex to say the few words of conclusion.
Yeah, I'm cognizant of time. We really appreciate everyone's participating. I think there was lots of really interesting information and thoughtful places to go from this conversation, and then the seeding of 4 or 5 smart people combined, you end up with something that's a lot more than 5. It's plays on each other. And so appreciate all of your participation, and we hope to cross paths again in the future. And I think we'll be cognizant of people's times and say thank you all. And thank you, Sarah, for your moderating, and my colleague Arnaud. And till we see you again, thank you all.